Hello friends, this is Dr. Rahul Kamath once again and it's great to be back. Today's video is, as you can see on the screen, is the astrological profiling of character. That's what the title says, of Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. Now, the title might appear a little strange. Normally we would say an astrological profile. What is an astrological profiling of character? Let's look at the second slide to understand this better. Now, let us understand this. Firstly, why this presentation? What is the need of this presentation? And again, how does the title justify itself? Now, firstly, I do believe that Vladimir Putin, as President of the Russian Federation, is a very important world person at this time and for many years now. And therefore, as a person and as a leader, as a political leader, his character or his personality, if I may say, merits a proper astrological profiling to understand him. I'm sure many astrologers, many people around the world will be curious about Vladimir Putin. Also, let me qualify this. This commentary or this profiling is not really of any predictive or any prognostic value, because that is not the direction of this study. Okay, it is also not any kind of a prognostication of any current military conflicts or operations going on in the world. Okay, so it is not related to the current happenings, as it were. It is more related to Vladimir Putin as a person and as the leader of Russian Federation that he is. This is a study of character. Character is there is a definition of character which says how people behave when nobody is looking. So this is about the character and the attributes of Putin, his qualities, what makes him tick really. It's obvious that he is a special person. You can't ignore him. What could be his psychological and personality traits? What could be his weaknesses and strengths? So we are looking at these kind of analysis today. And finally, as it might be obvious by now, that this is not a statement of morality or immorality as to what is right, what is wrong, or a statement of a judgment on the actions taken by him. This is not a statement of do's or don'ts, or what is inherently good or what is inherently evil, and therefore they should not be construed as such. Okay, so I think this is a sufficient understanding of what we are trying to do today. Now let's go to his birth details. So this is in the public domain. The sources were from the internet, from two sites. Both exactly match. So Putin was born on the 7th of October 1952, a Tuesday, the day of Mars, at St. Petersburg, which is also called Leningrad, at 9:30 a.m. Okay, so based on this, we have plotted his charts, his kundalis, and we will be doing the discussion. Now, what sort of approach are we really taking today? As we said again already, now I'm just trying to translate into astrological terms what the approach of this discussion today is. So we are discussing what is so with Vladimir Putin, which means what are his ingrained traits right from birth, what is embedded into his chart, what is his astrological signature at birth, is what we are essentially concerned with. So you could call it intrinsic, you could call it embedded, you could call it ingrained. Okay. So therefore, what is his being? So in a sense, it's a static analysis of his chart. We are not doing any dynamic analysis of his chart. So therefore, we will be studying, in this case, his kundalis or his horoscopes, the D1 chart, which is the primary chart, the Rashi chart as we call it. The D9 is the Navamaush chart. The D60 is the Shashti Ansh, and there are several other relevant Varga Kundalis or divisional charts, which we will be looking at. As said earlier, this is a static analysis, so therefore it is not a dynamic analysis. So it is not a what is unfolding right now kind of analysis, which means obviously we are not looking at dashas. We are not studying contemporary dashas, vimshottari or otherwise. We are not looking at the current planetary transits about which a lot has been written on the internet. So we are not looking at all of that. We are not looking at what is going to happen. So this is clear. What are we looking at? We are looking at Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, his astrological profile. Okay. Now with this, let me just proceed further. We are diving right in now. Now before we actually dive in and we go to the charts, what are the character traits or attributes which I thought, which probably need to come out or which need to be threshed out of the whole astrological analysis. So we want to get a feel of his whole profile, his personality. Just the positions of planets and everything, planets and nakshatras and degrees and aspectual relationships with each other will not help us to build the narrative if we do not know what we are looking for. So as somebody has said that the eyes cannot see what the mind does not know. So here what does our mind need to know? We want to study his political astuteness and ambition. He has been politically very astute. He has been a very ambitious leader of. We want to study what makes him so. Okay, what are the grahas which support this sort of a trait? He is an autocrat, very clearly. He is an autocratic leader, albeit democratically elected, if one can say that. What makes him autocratic and what gives him his controlling qualities, okay, which are obviously in great measure that he has. He has a clear-cut military and espionage background. He has been a KGB officer in the post-Cold War era. After that, he went to St. Petersburg, back to his hometown where he joined the mayor's office there. So he has a background in military, he has a background in espionage. What gives him this background, astrologically speaking? What's his personal charisma and magnetism? Where does it come from? It's obvious he has a magnetic personality. The way he conducts himself in public, his dealings with members in his senate or on his cabinet or with public at large. So we want to look at that. We want to look at his ultra-nationalistic patriotism to Mother Russia. So he is a patriot, and he is a patriot like none another. So I would call it ultra-nationalistic patriot and Mother Russia, certainly. So that the sense of doing whatever it is necessary for Mother Russia, that comes from where? We will look at that. And also when you say patriotism to Mother Russia, it also speaks about being wedded to a very high ideal of sorts, a utopian kind of ideal. So where does that come from? Then he is a very intelligent statesman. If you have heard him speak, he is extremely diplomatic. He is a good speaker. He knows when to speak. He knows when not to speak. So that's something we want to look at. And finally, a sense of destiny which he has, which is of course linked to the point number 5 here. He considers himself as the chosen one, and he's been in power for a very long time. What makes him this sort of a person? So I must say that Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin is a very fascinating astrological profile, and we shall start the process now. So this is the D1 chart here. I have made some bullet points on the side which you might want to read a little later. I'll give you a little, some seconds or some time to read it, but you can pay attention to what I'm speaking. This is a Libra ascendant. Firstly, what you can immediately see. The immediate thing that you see with the Libra ascendant in this case is the Venus is in the ascendant. Okay, and the Lagna Madhya of the Libra ascendant is 10 degrees 01 at Swati Nakshatra. And Venus also is in Swati Nakshatra. Okay, but probably in a different Navamaush for sure. Venus in Libra, which is a Mula Trikona Rashi for Venus, in the ascendant, in Swati, makes for a very it's an immediate thing that this person is like Lord of all that he surveys, a very powerful person. He is having Shukrik or Shukracharya like attitude and attributes. Shukracharya was the preceptor of the Asuras. He was a guru, but a guru of materialism, if one could put it in that way. Also, Venus is in the nakshatra of Swati, which is the nakshatra of Rahu. Rahu being the disciple of, or Rahu stands for the Asura Swarabhanu, who was a disciple of Shukracharya. So Venus in Libra in the ascendant is a very powerful personality. So that's immediate analysis of this. Now, a Libra ascendant would make Saturn as the Yoga-karak planet immediately. Okay, so Saturn here is Lord of the 4th and the 5th. Saturn is Yoga-karak. Saturn is, however, not in a great place. Saturn is in the 12th house. It is in the Rashi of Virgo with Mercury there and Sun there. So in the 12th house you have a Buddha Aditya Yoga. I am going to come to that, but let's speak at the moment about Saturn. So Saturn is in the 12th house in Chitra Nakshatra. It indicates a lot of things happening maybe outside of his country, or dealings with a lot of foreign agencies, a lot of involvement in foreign affairs. It also indicates some level of secrecy. Although Saturn is not in a very good position, as I said earlier, but still it is Yoga Karak, so it won't really do much harm. However, Saturn is in close proximity with Sun here. Sun is at 20 degrees 44 minutes, Saturn is at 24 degrees 15 minutes, so they are reasonably close. And they really traditionally don't really get along very well. So there is an awkward kind of a power relationship there with respect to Saturn and Sun. Now, some other very important points to note here in this chart. Let us look at the moon immediately. So typically when you analyze a D1 chart, you first look at the ascendant, you look at the sun and the moon. So that's the holy trinity, as it were, of Jyotish. Now moon here is at 9 degrees 42 minutes in Kritika, okay, in Taurus. So it is actually very close to its highest exaltation point. Moon is exalted. Exalted moon in the 8th house. This shows an extremely intelligent person. Intelligent as in very sharp. 8th house moon would give a person who is capable of conspiracies, of a lot of backdoor planning, somebody who is who will not reveal all his plans. It also indicates to you partly the nature of his professional signature, which was in the earlier years he was a KGB agent in espionage. So the espionage angle is kind of gets highlighted here partly, if I may say so. Now let's take our attention to Sun. Sun is in, as I earlier mentioned, Sun is in Virgo with Mercury. This is a Buddha Aditya Yoga, okay, as in a not really a conjunction, but a Sun and a Mercury together in the same house with a Mercury in its own house, kind of a picture is a very good thing. Point to note here is Mercury is in the nakshatra of Chitra, which is a Mars nakshatra. Okay, in this case Mercury, and you notice Mercury and Neptune have a very, very close conjunction here, almost within within 1.5 degrees of each other or 2 degrees of each other. Uh, Saturn again is in Chitra, about 5 degrees from Mercury. Chitra is a Mars nakshatra, and we will be speaking of the significance of Mars for Vladimir Putin. Remember, I mentioned to you he was born on a Tuesday as well. Now, Sun here is in the nakshatra of Hasta. What is the nakshatra lord of Hasta? Moon. And what is the nakshatra devata of Hasta? Savitra. Now, look at Moon. Moon is in Kritika, as I earlier mentioned. Lord of nakshatra Swami of Kritika is, nakshatra lord is Sun. And nakshatra devata is Agni. So, Moon is in the nakshatra of the Sun, Kritika. And Sun is in the nakshatra of the Moon, that is Hasta. This is a nakshatra parivartan yoga. Is this clear? This is a very unique feature I find in this chart, and particularly because Sun and Moon are in 5-9 kind of a trinal relationship, or we say Navam Pancham relationship here. So that gives a very unique strength to this chart also. Again, the Moon in the 8th house has given him this ability to plan and to do things very secretly. And again his power, which is the Sun. The Sun also stands for, in a way, authority, government. So you see, Putin, the Sun is very powerful here, but it's a hidden power. So in a sense, you will find that with the different situations which have evolved in the last 7 or 10 years with respect to Russia, you will find that the power is always hidden. It comes later. You realize the power later. It's almost like the people want something, not that the government wants something, but actually the government wants what the people want, kind of a situation. Okay, so this is one thing I wanted to speak about. Now, what makes him such a powerful political leader? He has Jupiter in the 7th house. Okay, in actually the nakshatra of Bharani, which is a Venus nakshatra, and in Jupiter is in Aries. And look here, Mars is in Sagittarius. So there is a Jupiter-Mars exchange of houses. Clear? Jupiter is in the Rashi of Mars. Mars is in the Rashi of Jupiter, and Jupiter has a 9th drishti on Mars in the D1. So you have a very powerful Jupiter-Mars relationship here. Not only that, you have a Jupiter in the nakshatra of Bharani, which is a Venus nakshatra, with a direct 7th aspect, frontal aspect on Venus in the ascendant, which is in Rahu's nakshatra. So you see that the Guru, that is what we call the Dev Guru Brihaspati, is actually supporting in a way Venus Shukracharya's or the Daitya Guru Venus's intentions here, in a sense that there is certain divine sanction, or a divine, when I say sanction I mean a divine approval of what Venus is doing through Jupiter. And Venus, of course, is in the nakshatra of Swati. So this is pretty clear. Now look at Mars. Mars is in Sagittarius. Okay. Sagittarius is what? Is what kind of a sign? It's a fiery sign, number one, and it's also a mutable sign. Okay. It's a dual sign. It's a changing sign. It has got a dual nature. So this is a fiery sign. So you have a powerful Mars in the 3rd house. 3rd house is a Upachai house. So you have a malefic Mars in a fiery sign, aspected by Jupiter, in a dual nature kind of a sign, in the nakshatra of Moola, which is a Ketu nakshatra. And we say Kujavat Ketu, which means Ketu also kind of supports or acts like Mars in some ways. So therefore you have a very, very powerful Mars here, a very aggressive Mars, but absolutely guided Mars guided by Jupiter. That means military aggression, military strategy, guided by absolute, by good thinking, by planning, by support of, uh, by support of, you can say, nature itself, in a way which Guru represents. And also here, let me tell you that in Russia, there is a Russian Orthodox Church, which is different than the Roman Catholic Church at the Vatican, or which is different than the other churches like the Church of England or the other Protestant churches. The the Russian Orthodox Church has its own father figure, or they have their own head of the church, or their church officials, who in case of Putin are completely behind him. They support him fully, which means he has the support of Guru here, which I was mentioning to you. Now Mars, look at Mars now. Mars has a fourth aspect on the sixth house. Okay, um, which means Mars is actually looking at enemies also. In a way, he has a watch on what's happening in the sixth house. Sixth house is the Ripusthana. Mars has a seventh aspect on the ninth house, with with the aspect on Uranus. Now, Uranus becomes very significant here, because Vladimir Putin is, his actions don't only impact him, they impact the fate of Russia, they impact the fate of the world. So the slow moving planets, like the outer planets like Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, therefore become very significant here. So a Mars aspect on Uranus um, has the capacity for violence. But again, in this case, the Mars is a very well placed Mars. It is well supported, well guided by Jupiter. So it will not be mindless violence. It will be something which is extremely strategically planned. Also, Uranus, if you notice, is in Punarvasu, which is a Guru Nakshatra again. So in a sense, and Uranus and Guru here have basically a, we have, there is like what we call um, um, labha relation, labhasthan relationship kind of a thing. So therefore it is basically supportive to each other. Now the eighth aspect of Mars falls on the 10th house of his chart, where there is Ketu. So Mars in a Ketu nakshatra, which is Mula, is aspecting Ketu itself in the 10th house. Okay, so therefore you can imagine that, and the 10th house is actually the house of is Cancer. Okay, so again, it's a very changeable sign. It's like a Chara Rashi. Karka Rashi is a Chara Rashi. It's a watery sign. It's a Chara Rashi. So so that sort of an influence at the workplace. So therefore it is very, very difficult to predict his behavior at the workplace. He is somewhat unpredictable at the workplace. He has a superbly gifted mind, as we already said, and with the other configurations, he becomes a serious power to reckon with. Now, if you see here, a couple of other things. The Ketu on which Mars is aspecting is actually at the Gandanta position almost. It's in the last Naumaush of, it's in the fourth pada of Ashlesha, okay, or the last Naumaush of Cancer in this case, okay, and which is Pisces. So therefore aspect of Mars on Ketu, which is in Gandanta, is significant in terms of things becoming explosive sometimes. So I think we have covered a lot of ground here. Now if you look at Rahu Ketu here, because if you are looking at Ketu, we have to certainly look at Rahu, and Rahu is very important here because his Lagnesh is in a Rahu Nakshatra, Swati. And where is Rahu placed? Rahu is in Dhanishtha, towards the end of Capricorn. Okay, so Dhanishtha is towards the end of Capricorn, and Dhanishta, Rahu is placed toward 26 degrees 48 minutes at Dhanishta, um, at Capricorn in Dhanishta. Now Dhanishta Nakshatra Lord is Mars again. So you see from the Lagnesh to Rahu and Rahu to Mars, from Mars to Ketu, Ketu to Mercury, and Ketu is again, Ketu is in Ashlesha, Ashlesha Lord being Mercury, Mercury in Mars. So you see the whole cycle of his how the planets interact with each other. Okay, so this is in a sense what Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin is all about. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. Here we are looking at now the D9 chart. So what we have studied now, we will find some additional support in that, and you will find some interesting further combinations happening. Now in the D9 you find that the D1 was a Venus ascendant, which was Libra. Okay, now in D9 you have a Capricorn ascendant, therefore Venus becomes Yoga Karak here. So look at it in this way. In D1 Venus is in Lagna, in Mula Trikon, extremely powerful. In D9 Venus is Yoga Karak and exalted in Pisces in the 3rd house. So exceptional position of Venus, exceptional position. Now here you can see that Venus is in with Moon as well. And Moon now, the Taurus Moon which was exalted, okay, which we discussed in the D1, is actually in D9. If you look at the D9 longitudinal analysis, and it is possible, I will not go into that, it means that even in D9 one can look at longitudinal degree analysis of the planet within that Navamaush. So here Moon is at 27 degrees 26 minutes of Pisces, which is in Gandanta. Moon is in Gandanta within Pisces in D9. So therefore this Moon is a Moon on edge. It's an intelligent, very sharp Moon, but a Moon on edge. So that's a point to note. That makes Vladimir Putin especially unpredictable also, and in a way sometimes dangerous as well. Now if you look at other planets in the D9, Mars is actually Mars has in a way improved, in a way you can say, or it is still good. Mars is in Aries in D9 own house and in Kendra. So that makes Mars very powerful. You have a Mars direct Drishti on Sun, which is very welcome in D9 because Mars and Sun are traditionally friends. Okay, and you do not see this relationship in the D1. In the D1 you don't see the Mars Sun relationship in a positive way, but here you can see the Mars and Sun are also connected. Again, Saturn and Mars in the D1 are not in a good, they are not exactly in a kind of a favorable aspectual relationship. But here you see that Mars and Saturn, they become phi 9 or trinal in a way. So these are a few things. So his planets actually improved. His Venus really came out in full bloom. Mars has improved. Sun is in the Sun is in a better position here in the Kendra, in the 7th house. You notice here also, very interestingly, Mercury and Neptune are in the same Navamaush. Very important. I actually did not speak about Pluto and Neptune. I will speak about it now because I forgot to talk about it in the previous slide. But here we have both D1 and D9, so it makes it much easier. Now, let's first, since we are on Mercury and Neptune, let's finish that. Mercury and Neptune in D1 are in Virgo in the 12th house, Mercury in its own house. Neptune actually stands for Varuna. Okay, and Varuna is a Asura in the original Vedic literature. Varuna is a Rigvedic Asura. Varuna is an overlord. There was a time when, before the gods and before the devas and the Daityas, they fought over the pot of nectar, so to speak. There was this whole thing. Before that whole war happened between the headed by Indra on the Deva's side, uh, there was one overlord which was Varuna, and Varuna is a very powerful deity. It is actually very malefic as well sometimes, and it sometimes creates a kind of a illusion at a different level. It represents in the body the pineal gland. It represents certain extra sensory perceptions, and here Mercury with Neptune in D1 uh, gives a special kind of inspiration to Putin, which cannot be put in explained in words. And again, you have Mercury and Neptune here in D9 together, and with Rahu. So Rahu is in the same. So therefore, and in the ninth house. So this is a very very powerful, explosive type of a chart here. Um, the good part is that Mercury is well placed in its element, in its dignity, one can say. The not so good part is that it is influenced by Neptune, which we do not know in what direction it will take the perception of a person, and again Rahu, which obviously seems to be very very important planet for um, Putin in any case. So Rahu here is in a good position again. It's in the ninth house. Saturn, however, you see in D9 has not improved. Saturn goes in the 8th house. Now, 8th house Saturn actually confers some level of longevity to him. Longevity. Because there have been certain, I would say, numerous assassination attempts on him, on his life, and he has survived. The 8th Saturn here probably has played a role in that. So, although it has created awkward situations from him, but politically, but it has always protected him. But truth be said, Saturn is not in a very good position. It being Lagnesh of D9, it is in the 8th house. Okay, and also it being Yogakarak in D1, it was in the 12th house in D1, and it has gone to the 8th house in D9. Okay, so if there is one planet which is not very well placed for Vladimir Putin, it would be Saturn. Okay, now let me draw your attention to now Mars direct aspect on Jupiter in D9. Mars is the 8th aspect on Jupiter. Jupiter is in Scorpio, which is a Mars house again. So again you see the Mars Jupiter collaboration. We have seen that extensively in D1. Jupiter's 9th aspect on Mars, Rashi Parivartan Yoga. Here you have Mars aspect on Jupiter. Again a very good collaboration. Now Ketu in the 3rd house with Venus actually helps Venus in a sense. It connects Venus with ancestral kind of energies. It connects the life force of Vladimir Putin with some kind of a inspirational ancestral energies, because Ketu also represents legacy. Ketu represents in a sense past life. It represents what is the unexpressed, what is the essence behind things, and also represent ancestors. So in a sense it shows that Vladimir Putin enjoys some blessings, if one may say so, from Mother Russia or from somebody in the past. Now Uranus again in D9 has gone into the 5th house. So you have Uranus in very good positions in the 9th house in D1, in the 5th house in D9. Pluto, I would like to now talk about. Pluto is in Gandanta. Can you see that in the D1? It is 29 degrees 31 minutes in Ashlesha Pada 4, or towards the end of the last Navamaush of Cancer, hovering at the Gandanta. So Pluto is a planet of generational change. So Pluto takes almost something like almost 30 years to transit a house. So therefore, and again in this case Putin's chart does not really impact him alone. In fact it has a bearing on a lot of world politics and where the world is heading. So therefore Pluto in Gandanta in Cancer would indicate huge generational changes which his leadership will see in the course of time. and probably we are seeing that right now. So I think we have covered a lot here. Let me just go, again, as I said, in D9 you have a Sun Saturn awkwardness, you have a 212 relationship here of Sun Saturn, which again is not good. So Sun Saturn relationship in D1 D9 is affected, which basically has to do with there is a certain unease about power itself. It is, Putin is uneasy about, it's like can't live with it, can't live without it. So it's like it's a, for him it's a holy duty, a necessary medicine, a bitter medicine to swallow, leading Russia or the Russian Federation in a sense, because he has to do what he has to do because there is nobody else to do it, perhaps from his perspective. Now I would like to now, before we end, I would like to now look at some other charts. I would like to look at his D60, which is the Shashti Amsha I already spoke about. I want to look at D12, which is actually the chart of his parents, his legacy. Where does it come from? We read on Wikipedia that he probably lost his father, when he was very young. His father was possibly a soldier. His mother really went through extreme hardships and poverty to bring him up, and she probably went through some mental disturbances and things like that, what we read in the media. And also I would like to look at his D27 chart, which is called his Saptavimshansh, which actually shows his sources of strength really, and also a chart which is called Trimshansh, which is D30, which actually indicates what areas he could be troubled with, what could be his areas of misfortune or potential misfortune. Okay, so let's look at these things. Now I have these 4 charts in front of me, and I will analyze this, and then I have written on the right side, but I will explain what I mean. Now if you look at his D60 chart, now D60 commonly refers to past life. Okay, we know that D60 refers to like a connection between his immediate past life and his current life, sort of thing. Now here you see Mars and Rahu and Pluto as well in the ascendant, which shows a person extremely concerned with power, with control, somebody who is very aggressive, scheming, in that sense, and then on the other side you have Moon Ketu in the 7th house. Moon again in in a Jupiter Dhanu Rashi, which is a Agni Tattva, and with Ketu, it indicates tendencies of renouncement, tendencies to completely detach, almost being enlightened in a way. So this is a dichotomy in him. You see on the right side, now you can read, you see the rebel, you see the angry activist, the rebel, the revolutionary, that kind of a thing, and you see a philosopher renunciate. You see somebody who's in that sense very and plus a Jupiter and a Saturn conjunction, so karma dharmadipati together in the 4th house, all that. So you see that in his past life. So this is what it brings into this life, and this gets colored by the D1 and the D9. Okay, now let's look at his D12, his parental chart. Now here, if you look at what we say in a very at a very superficial level, if you look at his Naisargik Pitrukaraka, okay, would be the sun, and his Naisargik Matrukarak would be the moon. So the significator of the father, that is the sun, here is with Venus and Ketu. Okay, now sun with Venus and Ketu would indicate some kind of suffering, I would imagine. So it also kind of points to some sort of a lineage which we do not know. Maybe his father, his grandfather, and his earlier generations, the Ketu signifies that. But it also shows suffering, and it shows that the sun got compromised, as it were, with respect to what happened to his father. Okay, so that's one thing. And again, as we can see here, the Sun Venus Ketu obviously falls in the Rahu Ketu axis here. And then you see his mother, which is the moon. Now the moon is kind of corrupted in a way with Mercury. A moon Mercury conjunction probably is not a good idea for mental health in the long run, along with Neptune, again, which is the Varuna, the Asura Varuna, and which clouds intellect and cloud perception, can create confusions. And also Gulika there, Gulika being Shaniputra Gulika, which creates a lot of suffering, enormous suffering, mental, So you can see here that there has been some level of parental suffering from the D12, you can see. But his Mars is in extremely good condition, and you see that all through his divisional charts that the planet Mars is actually well maintained, as well as his Venus. Again, the Venus is in Taurus in D12. Mars is in Capricorn, which is exalted in the 12th house. So that you can see that that there is this tendency to fight back, and there is a certain kind of a thing which he has inherited from his parents and his ancestors. Now let's look at what his strengths are. If you look at his D27, one immediate thing you can see, apart from many other things, is that, you find that for example, Rahu Ketu passing through the ascendant and the 7th house here can represent that. He is basically devious. He has to fight. He has to plan and strategize and do all that. So the Rahu there is like a snake which is at his disposal, but he has to protect that he does not get bitten by the snake. The more important point to note here is that Jupiter is in Pisces with Moon and Pluto in the 9th house. What does that mean? Jupiter in Pisces is in the house of Dharmasthana. So for him, a Jupiter in its own house, in its own sign in the 9th house, would indicate it's like he's on a mission. He's on a holy mission of a sorts. He's on a moral high ground. He is very clear that what he is doing is right for the world. That what he is doing, he has a holy right to do that, and he is very emotional about that fact as well. So Moon Jupiter here actually make him righteous, make him holier than thou in a sense, and make him very convinced that he is doing the right thing, and which perhaps he might be. But again, there is a Pluto there, which shows an aspect of power struggles and generational change, which I spoke to you about. Mercury again is in own house in Virgo. Again, we find that Mercury and Mars usually are very well protected. Mars now has an aspect on Mercury also, if you notice, 4th aspect on Mercury. Mars in Mercury's house and Mars having a 4th aspect on Mercury. So there is a certain synergism there, if you can understand. Cool. So now we come to the final chart, which is the D30 or the Trivshansh, which is a chart for misfortunes. Now, if you notice here, the immediate thing you notice when you look at the D30 chart are two things. You see a Papakartari kind of a situation for the Lagna or the Ascendant. The Ascendant is actually caught between the 2nd and the 12th house. You have serious malefics in the 2nd house. Sun is a malefic for Jyotish purpose. Sun, Gulika, Saturn together. It's like a potent, almost a poisonous brew there, a semi-poisonous brew sitting in the 2nd house. You have in the 12th house you see Rahu Ketu are all together. Rahu Ketu, Neptune, Pluto and Mercury. Again in the sign of Scorpio, and aspected by a Mars in the 9th house, a direct aspect of Mars in the 5th house. The 8th aspect of Mars in the 5th house. So you see that the 12th house is loaded here, the 2nd house is loaded. The 12th house indicates that there is a tendency for some conspiracies to happen in his back door, which could actually physically and or politically harm him. And you have the second house again, which is a lot of power struggles, Sun Saturn in the second house of Putin. When you, in this case, the parivar or the kutumba sthana, in the larger context it would apply to the his kutumba, in the context of his work would be his cabinet, would be his close politburo members or senate members. So there is a lot of intrigue and political machinations happening there. So that's the misfortune, in a sense. That's the danger that he faces. Okay. Now with this, I think I am done. I thank you for listening to this. I am very happy with the facts that we have unearthed today, and I think Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, uh, his chart is a very interesting study for all of us astrologers. Thank you so much, and I welcome your comments. Please subscribe, like, and share, and thanks for watching.